Yeah, I just wanted to note that something that just keeps coming up is whether or not we focus on that moment of choice or the emergent properties that grow out of the succession of choices all the time. And it always seems like when you look over here, it seems like you're favoring this too much. And then when you look wider, you know, we can never get it because it's always the relationship between the two different situations. And so sometimes our criticism is we're focusing too much on this and focusing too much on that, but we have to, and there's no remedy to that paradox. That's the way it is.
So discrete and continuous, but it's a chicken and
Yeah.
egg.
Yeah. Mhm.
Josh, you're mute, Josh.
Oh, am I still muted?
No, we're getting you now.
Oh, okay. So, well, first of all, I want to sort of highlight the thread of relevance that Kobus brought up. I think that really is important aspect of how it is there are options in the first place. I am as well intrigued with how it is options individuate from within a continuous sort of field of possibility space, or, a firstness. Like as most of you know, I'm interested in Simondon and individuation, how it is the relata and the relations co-emerge. And I think once we grapple with that, I think we can also then address Tori's point about how it is, the paradox that we've all referred to multiple times, like the irreducibility of whether it's firstness, secondness, and thirdness, or interpretant, representomen, object interpretant, like how it is, because I completely agree, like Kalevi reminded us that, those all coexist simultaneously, and how but the nature of language is that we just, to Tori's point, like it's sequential. So we say, oh, well, right now in my mind, I'm talking about, firstness or the interpretant, but then under the surface, so to speak, brewing in this continuous space are these other attributes that are in tension. So how it is we sustain this tension, how it is we understand this tension, characterize this tension that may be unstatable, really. Yeah, so I'll leave it at that.
I think it was Emanuela and then Ľudmila.
Thank you. Yeah, Alex really made me wonder, because indeed, when I think about food choice, especially within biology, and especially if I think the first life form had to make a certain kind of choice relating to the environment, and that was really within that framework of simultaneity and the options that give the agency of eating. And also in contemporary context, human context, just the reaching to a food product or to pointing on a restaurant menu to a particular, just the food choice to me seems particularly apt to illustrate the semiosis as choice. And my now reflection is about the fact that indeed, I mean, choice can be more articulated, and I don't know if it's too much to ask Kalevi if he could have elaborate on how, for example, choice regarding, I don't know, buying a house or where to go on holiday, like that is more pondered over time, how that relate to simultaneity. I don't know, maybe there is this time dimension that has to be considered. And I can see the semiotic process in this kind of choices as well. Although, yeah, I don't know, I'd like to ask Kalevi if he could elaborate on that.
So consumer choice as opposed to organic choice.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, like food choice to me seems to exemplify particularly well this idea of simultaneity and so to me the equation of semiosis as choice making is just very clear. But as Alexei was noticing, it is true that the choices can be more, like layered and complexes in the way they're approached temporally. And that is, also Tori was mentioning that. So I just want to know how that can be taken into account into that framework. Thank you.
Very briefly. Very briefly, so maybe the choice of words would be helpful here. So what I primarily would mean is not choice as decision or something done, but process of choosing, or I would describe it almost synonymously as confusion. So the situation of confusion, that is the situation of choice making or process of choosing, is what happens in the situation of confusion. So I think these are the same thing. So confusion is, I do think now, such very universal situation, what we can see from, well, most of living beings. And actually, I agree with Alexei here. That's the emergence of that. So how it has to happen, that's the problem. Thanks.
Let me bring Ľudmila in.
Yeah, so first of all, I also wanted to highlight the notion of relevance. I think that was great, and I wanted to advertise the work of Israel Chávez, who worked a lot with Luis Prieto and his notion of pertinence, which is kind of related to the relevance. So that was my first point. And then I also wanted to comment on what Professor Sharov mentioned, the code duality. So I think in what Hofmeier with Emmeke elaborated this duality between discrete and continuous, or between digital and analog, was, if I understand correctly, was elaborated in such a way that these two notions are not separated, and they together constitute semiotic processes. So it's not that we have either one or the other, or I don't think if it's really appropriate stating that, let's say, machines are only using discrete digital codes and living beings and humans are only using the continuous or analog. More likely we have combination of both in both systems, and especially in living beings and in humans is this coexistence of digital and analog what makes the semiosis. If we use Charles Peirce here, it would be the difference between dyadic and triadic, where dyadic is digital or discrete and triadic is analog or continuous. But as you know, in Peirce, these two ways of evolution, or the tacastic and anancastic, somehow emerge together, and it's not that one preceded the other, but they are complementary, and this complementarity results in the agapistic evolution. And thus, we cannot really say that dyadic preceded triadic, or first we had the discrete codes and then we can have analogous codes on a higher level. But according to Peirce, dyadic only comes after triadic, so we can have dyadic or discrete once we already had the triadic or analogous before. And this is the non-reduction theorem by Peirce.
Okay, thanks, Ľudmila. Then Frederik.
Yeah, thank you. I much agree with what Ľudmila said, and I think I can also defend Kalevi's point of view here, because I certainly don't think that Kalevi's way of articulating this leads into computationalism. The choice, or now you call it confusion, Kalevi, is appearing in a continuous process, namely that of metabolism. I mean, Uexküll's functional circle is a continuous line describing ongoing metabolism. And of course, as you all know, there's a section of the circular metabolism there, which goes on in the outer world, which is what necessitates agency, that the organism has to act in this world in order to complete the continuous circle. So discontinuity emerges on specific points in a continuous process, I would say. I mean, you can also refer to a very old diagram dear to many biosemioticians, namely Conrad Waddington's diagram of embryology. You know, he had the epigenetic landscape determined by the metabolism of the embryo, and then at certain specific points there were possibilities of choices where metabolism could go this way or that way, but those moments of choice were sort of embedded in a larger continuous landscape. I think that's the way I would see these choices that Kalevi speak about.
Okay, thanks.
Can
Cobley, somebody
jump in?
responded?
Yeah. So I actually have a question for Kalevi. I think, I mean, obviously you're making yourself clear, but my question now is, why do you conceptualize this choice then in negative terms? Confusion. Why don't you formulate it in positive terms, like dealing with possibilities?
They are synonymous, compatible, I think. So that is, of course, I would, yeah.
Is there biological reasons? I'm not attacking you, I'm really trying to understand.
No, I so much like this question. We should always be positive and use positive words. I absolutely agree.
And for those who don't know us, Kalevi is the optimist and I'm the pessimist, so it's actually a bit ironic.
But Kobus, I have a question for you in this, and that is, you know, thinking about the stress on confusion, which I think is, you know, derived partly from Lotman. If there's absolute clarity, you don't need translation.
Yeah, that's a very good reason, a very good argument. I'm not sure that Lotman always termed it in negative terms, although I'm not a specialist in Lotman. I mean, at some points he would just say, for the translational process, you require two systems. He wouldn't specify the nature of your relation or the system's relationships with one another. I assume that in any translation process, there's a certain amount of opaqueness anyway. But yeah, no, Paul, I'll have to think about this. For me, I'm probably influenced by thinking in terms of constraints. So the representamen opens a number of possibilities, and those possibilities could obviously lead to confusion, but they need not necessarily lead to confusion. You could sort of either in a quite mechanical, chemical moment make a link like the bacteria does, or you could think it through, or you could work based on a kind of a habit. So I'm not sure that there needs to be antagonism before decision making, unless you conceptualize the agent and its environment in a kind of agonistic relationship.
Thanks, Kobus. Well done for thinking on your feet there. Josh. I think you're muted again, Josh. Or something.
Can you hear me now? I think it takes a second to unmute.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, this is the crux, I think, right here, is that the confusion, the sort of tendency towards confusion and the tendency towards reasonableness in, you know, in Peircean sense, coexist simultaneously. They have to coexist. They have to be in tension continuously. And the ratio in the Lotmanian sense, the combination of translatability and untranslatability, compatibility and compatibility, again, they have to be proximal. They have to be coextensive, simultaneous. They have to be of the same system, I would argue, ontologically. And really interestingly, just to tie a couple threads together, actually, you know, I want to echo, you know, Ľudmila bringing up agapistic evolution, because for Peirce, as far as I understand it, at its core, what emerges from both the tychastic and the anacastic is a positive sympathy, which I think is quite related to not only Kobus bringing up, you know, relevance or, you know, these kinds of ideas, but also navigating the tension between necessary confusion and a growth towards reasonableness. Like, these have to coexist. Otherwise, there's no meaning making.
Or at some point, you can handle the online ones, but at some point I have a hand in the audience.
Okay. Let's go to the audience first, because I can see the sequence afterwards.
I'm just curious. I want to put a scenario out. What in the case of cancer, for example? So at some stage, the cells in your body decide or not decide, or it happens that they go and they do what they're not supposed to do. And then you as a human being have to respond to that. And then you develop medicines and treatment options and you fight back. Another scenario, let's look at the coronavirus, which has very conveniently made the spillover from animals into humans, found new hosts, and you can't kill your host. So you kind of mutate into a less virulent form to keep your host alive. Where, I don't know. I just want to put that out there, please. Thank you.
So thank you. And Kobus, you thought you were bleak and pessimistic. Who would like to respond to this one?
Do you want me to respond?
No. I was observing you.
My response would be, hell no, I don't know.
Well, I have responded to that question in the essay that I mentioned on autoimmune disease in that little volume dedicated to Kalevi's 70th birthday. So that's one of those choices, that choosing between self and non-self, and sometimes the body makes a mistake because of the context, usually, in the way that the T cells, for instance, have been trained in other contexts that are no longer relevant to the new situation, and through molecular mimicry, where there's some sort of mistaken identification. I wanted to say something about the idea of confusion, which of course I love. And, you know, as Heraclides said, things are never the same twice. And so all of our semiotic infrastructure is modeled upon past experiences, and we never encounter that exact situation again. So it's always this process of fitting, trying to fit. And so there's always this moment of confusion where things aren't exactly like they were. And so there's a hesitation, and then finally state change occurs. So.
Okay, does that address the issue? Because if so, I'd like to move to Israel. I didn't even know you were on this call, so excellent. Good to see you.
Hi, and good to see all of you. And yeah, I'm sorry because I will go back to humans, and because so I am a bit sorry I didn't submit a presentation this time, because I think even for last year I had one presentation that I had thought for this for the biosemiotics relates to theoretical work in structural linguistics, because reading these classics, reading André Martinet, he says, in fact, that every linguistic unit is a choice. So, and this has to do with what Ľudmila was mentioning at the beginning about minimal pairs, and during her presentation, that for Martinet, there is a choice between, in French, saying Pierre and bière. So there would be a choice, as if there would be a choice between choosing to make our vocal cords vibrate or not. Now, when I was reading this, because I don't think neither of us actually think about separating or putting close together our vocal cords. And this question of choice, when we are talking about articulatory processes, it led me to think that perhaps we should consider not segments as, okay, so segments, phonemes, let's say, they can be at the level of choosing, but maybe we can think about just a whole choice of a gesture by means of which we produce a word, like a proper word, like a unit of first articulation. But this, again, it doesn't really solve the problem of choices. And now I want to link to what Paul was saying, and postmodernism, and link it to psychoanalysis, because in linguistics, we don't really deal with things like lapsuses, so they can be just some mistake. But from psychoanalysis, they can, from a psychoanalytical point of view, they are key. And I think perhaps this notion of choice and even this notion of confusion, because the place of the choice and who is making this choice, it's a very psychoanalytical question in a way. But just to be clear, what I mean by I mean psychoanalysis in a very broad way, and mostly understood as a kind of theory of the subject. So for me, I would sort of try to contribute like putting together all what has been said, or parts of what has been said, that I believe that this question of identity that Frederik was mentioning also, I think it might relate to this problem of who is choosing, but always keeping in mind that Kalevi uses choice as a technical term, so it's not choice as he already said it. So yeah, that was my comment, and yes, thank you so much for all this.
Sorry, I'm on mute now. Does anyone wish to respond to Israel? I mean, I will, just to amplify. I mean, Israel, I think you were referring especially to those sort of dilemmas and crises of choice that are not necessarily known. They can be occluded. In the examples of hysteria, for example, where there's a translation into a somatic symptom from a choice that might have been made, sometimes with fully conscious bearings. For example, shell shock, where you cannot speak. The body makes a choice for you not to speak, and it's thought to be hysteria. But if you do speak, it could lead to court-martial and death.
Yes, but also just a mistake, like I don't know, like calling someone by another name, just by mistake, like maybe similar name. So in principle, this can just be yeah, so something happened with the articulation and so on, but is it so? So if I say I want Pierre instead of I want a bière in French, I don't know. I think so. This is not a new problem, but I think Kalevi's notion of choice can help to link linguistics, a little bit of psychoanalysis, and just to develop maybe a good theory about our own subjectivity. Why do we make so? These sort of unconscious choices, are there choices in Kalevi's sense exactly? And so if they are, then what is the agency at play there? I think that can be a nice contribution from our good Professor Kull. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I have a question in the audience here.
Yeah, excellent. And then Frederik.
Ellen Mary Kaywood.
Thank you very much for this discussion. It's very interesting, and as a disclaimer, I'm not a biosemiotician. Neither am I a biologist, nor am I a semiotician. So it's a very simplistic question, and it follows on from what Israel asked, which I think is such a fascinating point of discussion. If one looks at theories of psychoanalysis, if of traumas, childhood traumas, for example, that affect the way that we respond to certain situations unconsciously. And this is actually just re-articulating what Israel mentioned just before he finished, just to perhaps ask if there is or where the notion of making or choice making, the art of choosing, the action of choosing fits into these traumatic responses, or any sort of unconscious response to a past event, especially one that is rooted in childhood trauma. I'm not sure if that is any kind of a question, but it's just a question I have.
If anyone wishes to respond, or otherwise we go to Frederik.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, maybe it has a bit to do with the question, maybe not, but I was a bit intrigued by the cancer question that came up like 10 minutes ago, because I think it's important that as academics or scholars or scientists or whatever we are, we should never be fooled by, what should I say, the positive versions of our concepts only. Also a bit related to what Kalevi just said. I mean, cultures may be terrible, agency may lead to disastrous results, and we should also be able to understand those, right? I think it's a very important lesson to remember all the time. Maybe that also has to do with the trauma question that just came up here. I mean, yeah, there are. I mean, speaking about Peirce, Ľudmila mentioned his idea of agapastic evolution, which of course is a positive vision of the future. But you should add that all of his career, Peirce had a very low opinion of individuals. He saw them as egoistic, prone to mob violence, prone to error, prone to misunderstanding, prone to whatever social disease there could be. So all of his career he fought with, how do I grant that these individuals, with all of their errors, they actually may collaborate in a way that make progress in science and society possible. I mean, the agapastic vision, right? He struggled with that all of the time, and I don't think he believed he came up with the final solution, really.
Kobus, I'm aware that the assembled in the room, the in-person delegates have got an appointment after this. Shall we wrap up?
Paul, there's one thing, you have to be ready to watch the game between our two countries.
I'd never mentioned
Oh,
anything of that kind.
No, that's why
I'm simply thinking of the
I knew
schedule.
I had to
Yeah,
remind
you
you.
know, I wasn't even thinking about it.
No, not at all. I know that.
So just please also check the South African cricket team at the Cricket World Cup while you're now talking biosemiotic nonsense. Yeah, Paul, so I think, yes, we have another thing a bit later on. So, and it doesn't seem that there are any further questions or comments in the room. So over to you.
Yes, okay. So I'd just like to close this. So where have we got today? I don't know. We won't know until the next gatherings, really, what we've learned today. But I think it's certainly worthwhile taking these core notions and you know, exercising ourselves on them a little bit, and you know, perhaps reaching a kind of stunning conclusion that culture and agency not necessarily equals good. Sometimes can equal bad. It's a mixed up, muddled up, shook up world for my Lola.
Yeah.
On that bombshell, I'd just like to say thanks to everybody who took part in this panel.